All right, our next speaker is Valentina Manríquez Ramirez. Valentina is a marine biologist who enjoys fieldwork and transdisciplinary science. In Chile, her home country, she collaborates with other female scientists to develop participatory science with communities facing environmental conflicts. Valentina is another student who we've been trying to get here for quite some time. She received prestigious funding from the Chilean government, and we were so excited that she did because, like I said, we've been hoping that she could join us for quite a few years. And just such a leader before even getting here back in her home country of Chile. Super excited to have her here, collaborating with alumni and just some of the foremost leaders on this issue that she's chosen. So the title of her presentation is Socio-ecological Pathways in Kelp Forest Conservation. Welcome, Valentina.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, when I arrived to San Diego 1 year ago, I was surprised by the popularity of kelp forest here. Most of my classmates had dived there and were conservation programs all over the coast of California. These aggregations of giant seaweed, which resemble terrestrial forests, also thrive along the coast of Chile, my home country. However, there, kelp forests are mainly known by scientists and fishermen, but are not too popular among regular people. Actually, I am a marine biologist, and I had never been in a kelp forest until I came here. You can see me. No, you can't. Now you can see me. They're trying to look good in front of these giant Macrocystis pyrifera that can reach up to 100 feet tall. Kelp covers almost a quarter of the world's coastlines, and it has been reported that over the past 50 years, between 40 and 60% of the forest worldwide have been degraded due to climate change and overexploitation, as you can see in this map in red. Since these ecosystems sustain high biodiversity and provide several functions for humankind, such as fisheries production and protection of the coastlines from erosion and degradation, kelp depletion has driven a surge in projects aimed at restoring and protect them over the past decade. With all that in mind, I decided the kelp forest would be a perfect case study to learn about conservation in coastal environment from a socio-ecological perspective. That is to say, considering kelp forest as a part of a complex systems in which not just ecological but also social dimensions are interconnected and continuously interacting and influencing to another. Therefore, I wanted to learn about whose interests shape kelp forest conservation, what knowledge informs conservation practices, and how conservation strategies impact local communities. To answer those questions, I aimed to analyze the socio-ecological relationships underlying kelp conservation initiatives. To achieve that goal, my investigation explores two case studies of kelp forest conservation, one in Chile and one in California, two different socio-political regions that share similar oceanographic conditions and kelp forest ecological dynamics. Both cases are marine protected areas, and in both cases, the kelp forest is dominated by Macrocystis pyrifera. The first case study is the nature sanctuary Bosque de Calabacillo, located in central Chile. Calabacillo is the name that local people give to Macrocystis pyrifera. The nature sanctuary Bosque de Calabacillo is a marine protected area where extraction is prohibited. The sanctuary is located in a rural area where people rely on local natural resources for their livelihoods, including tourism and artisanal fisheries. Adjacent to the sanctuary, there are management areas destined for benthic resource exploitation, such as shellfish, and those areas are managed by fishermen unions, which are also responsible for preserving these resources. The second case study is right here, the marine protected areas of South La Jolla, California. South La Jolla State Marine Reserve and South La Jolla State Marine Conservation Area are adjoining marine protected areas situated in a urbanized, highly populated, and tourist-heavy region of San Diego County. South La Jolla State Marine Reserve, in red, prohibits both recreational and commercial extraction of all marine resources, while South La Jolla State Marine Conservation Area, in blue, permits certain types of recreational and commercial extraction. To collect this information from both sides, I conducted a literature review focusing on scientific articles and policy documents, and I also interviewed relevant actors from each case study, including local inhabitants, managers, scientists, and workers. And based on my interviews and the literature review, I want to show and share with you some findings. The nature sanctuary Bosque de Calabacillo, established in 2012, is the first and only marine protected area in Chile aimed at conserving specifically a kelp forest. The sanctuary is considered a pioneer initiative since it was proposed jointly by local fishermen, scientists, and the municipality or the municipal government. A multi-sectoral effort in contrast to governmental and private examples. This conservation initiative was led by two marine biologists, one a former worker of the municipality, and the other a researcher from a Chilean university. They aimed to protect the kelp forest as these ecosystems were experiencing severe depletion, not here in central Chile, but in northern Chile, due to overharvesting for abalone farming and exportation to the international markets. The biologists gained support from the local fishermen unions who hoped that protecting the kelp forest would create a spillover effect in their management areas, increasing the abundance of resources such as rockfish, and shellfish. And the local community played an active role here throughout the sanctuary establishment process, assisting with data collection and securing funds for the sanctuary ecosystem baseline. South La Jolla Marine Protected Areas, called SMR and SMCA, are part of California's Marine Reserve Network, established under the state law to protect and recover marine life and economically significant species. And through a public policy process, a regional stakeholder group developed proposals for the MPA designation, while the state agency California Fish and Game Commission served as the final decision-making authority for this process. The stakeholder group who proposed the South La Jolla MPAs comprised representatives from various sectors, including commercial and artisanal fisheries, managers, scientists, birdwatchers, surfers, NGOs, and tribal representatives. By law, the process required that MPAs designations be based on the best readily available science. To support this, a science advisory team provided scientific guidelines for the MPA network design, determining the size, spacing, types of animals to be protected. The SMR and SMCA implemented in 2012 were based on recommendations from a scientific article published by Parnell and collaborators in 2006, which identified the southern half of La Jolla areas as suitable for a reserve due to its persistent kelp and unique oceanographic and ecological characteristics. Now, having this information in mind, and considering that these two cases are examples of conservation in populated areas where a variety of human activities are occurring, I want to present 3 topics to discuss that emerge from my analysis. The first one is it kelp really popular, as I thought in the beginning? Well, kelp forests are fascinating ecosystems, but they remain largely inaccessible to the general public due to their underwater location. In Chile, as we saw, the primary groups connected to the kelp forest are fishermen and scientists, which most of the general community being unfamiliar with these ecosystems. Actually, an interview noticed about the Calabacillo forest that there's a sanctuary viewpoint along the tourist route, and people stop to watch the sanctuary, but they can't recognize it. So it's not very impressive for them. While here in California, according to surveys from the Public Policy Institute, there is general community support for marine protected areas through the state, but since those areas are covering different kind of habitats, we don't know exactly what is happening with the support on kelp forests specifically. A second topic, if I can, yes. It's about science informing and promoting kelp conservation. In both Chile and California, scientific knowledge plays a crucial role informing conservation decisions and guiding initiatives implemented. The scientific community emerged as a key actor, not just providing information, but also interacting and influencing policy decisions. And a third point is about the relevance of bottom-up approaches in kelp forest conservation. While in Chile, the local fishermen's union play a pivotal role in supporting the creation of Calabacillo Sanctuary, this community support has been crucial because since the implementation of the sanctuary in 2012, there's no management plan, no administration plan, and no funds allocated for maintaining the sanctuary. So it's the community who is playing a pivotal role in sustaining the protection there. While here in California, the process designation from the MPAs at the beginning wasn't successful because not all the actors felt involved, but in a second chance, when everybody was involved in decision-making, the process was successful. And finally, as a conclusion, scientists, fishermen, and governments are played substantial roles in conservation. We can see that scientific knowledge is informing conservation in kelp forests, but it's also necessarily to count with the community input for well-rounded conservation strategies, tailoring approaches to each area's unique context, and using a bottom-up strategy promoting effective and fair conservation objectives for each place. I want to say thank you to my capstone committee for their support, invaluable support, my family and friends, my cohort, and many, many collaborators during all this process, people who generously help me and provide a lot of data and support. So it's a collaborative work. And thank you for listening. Oh, any questions? I would be happy to answer. Yeah. Or comments?
I've got some questions. Valentina, really interesting presentation. Thanks so much for sharing it with us. I'm curious, what threats are facing kelp forests in these case studies? And is there a similarity between the threats in California versus in Chile?
Yes. According literature, there's common threats, like oceanographic conditions, that climate change is a threat. Basically, the El Nino event, like ENSO, that event is provoking here in the southern hemisphere, like in California forest, like most intense and persistent events, and that is prejudicial for kelp forest and for other inhabitants of the forest. While in Chile, we also have the El Nino event, and people have reported that in that cases, the intermission of sand at the kelp forest is kind of changing the habitats. On the other hand, overharvesting is also a problem, but in a different way. In Chile, in northern Chile, there's overharvesting specifically of kelp for international commerce or for feed abalone in abalone farming. While here in California, kelp is not harvesting, but the harvesting is occurring on other inhabitants or other communities of the kelp forest, like fishes. So that provokes an unbalanced ecological situation there, and that affects the kelp. So both climate change and the changing of oceanographic conditions and also overharvesting are the most relevant threats.
Hey, Valerie, great job.
Thank you.
You sort of are getting to this at the end of that answer, but what I was curious about is how the macrocystis forest covers such a massive range of the Chilean coast that it seems like if you were to try and make one management strategy across the entire country, that might not be as helpful as having maybe regional strategies. And I'm curious if in your research in the Chilean kelp forest, if you found that some areas might be being hit by certain stressors or might be being impacted negatively by things that other regions might be not experiencing. I was curious if you could elaborate on that at all.
Yeah, no, I just consider one case study, but kelp forest in Chile is very diverse. Like in Chile and Patagonia, Chile and Argentina, Patagonia, you can find this massive forest, like a very tall, very ancient, and very persistent. But here, the forest that I show you guys is very tiny. It's like a 0.1 square miles. And we have these kind of little patches all over the coast. And what I'm trying to represent here is how these little patches are relevant for local communities. And this is the only management area of marine protected area dedicated to protect kelp. We don't have any other areas protecting kelp forest. There's some management plan and that kind of strategies going on. There's management fisheries and other kind of protection laws, but we are not establishing protected areas for kelp particularly. But definitely that needs a regional approach because every place is different. So yeah. Thanks for the question.
Thanks so much, Valentina.
Okay, thanks.